Countdown to Eternity starts now.
Well, hello, my dear brothers and sisters. We want to welcome you to another episode of Countdown to Eternity. And I am here again with David TaL. And I have to say this, we have a very special episode of Countdown to Eternity to talk about. And I'm going to tell you why. Because we have several stories that we're going to discuss.
Okay.
But before we discuss those stories, I want to talk to you about a very special feast that Jews all over the world celebrate. We celebrate it on many occasions for many different reasons because of the significance that it bears. And before we talk about it, I just want to lay a little bit of background out. And believe me, guys, I want you to stick with me on this because you will understand and develop an overwhelming appreciation for where we're going to go with this, okay? It's a critical thing that I want you guys to just stick with me on, okay? So let's start with this. The prophet Malachi receives a word from the Lord. It is, in essence, the last warning from God to a nation that was rebelling against him. This was Israel. They were rebelling against God. You know, during the post-exilic period, they just seemed like they didn't learn their lesson. And quite frankly, look, we don't learn our lessons when we're disciplined and when we're put through the ringers, and we just continue to harden our hearts, and that's just the way things go.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, we've all been there and done that. So the last message goes out, and the Jews that are listening don't listen. Well, they listen, but they don't act on it. And as a result, they end up getting themselves in a very, very difficult situation. Within less than 100 years from the time Malachi warns the people of God, and the situation is, in essence, hopeless. You had Ezra come in, you had Nehemiah come in, you had many other prominent people in Jewish history come in and rebuild not only the temple, but they rebuilt the walls. They rebuilt the city of Jerusalem and gave back to God's people a place for them to call their home again. And of course, they chose to rest in their comfort and not necessarily in the commandments and the law of their God.
Been there, done that.
Right? And created a significant problem for themselves. And then we find ourselves roughly 150 years later, maybe close to 200 years later, and the Jews are in a terrible situation, right? They're met with an evil man by the name of Antiochus, right? And a lot of bad things are going on. And this is where the story begins. So maybe you can tell us this story, because there's an interesting guy that comes into play. His name is Judas. He's a very interesting guy, and some amazing things happen when this takes place. So tell us this story, and then we're going to lay the foundation for some of the news articles that we're going to go over. And folks, believe me, you're going to want to listen to these.
I think this is a story that we all know, but in different versions. So we'll start off with the beginning. You call him Antiochus. It's a nice name. His name is Antiochus.
Yeah, Antiochus. Of course, we know that. Now, keep this in mind. If I say something like Antiochus, or if I say Capernaum, or if I say Jerusalem, or anything, most people are not going to know what those words mean, because
one of the things, again, me and you, we speak Semitic languages.
Yeah, so we get it. But it's funny, if you have a background that David and I have, you'll understand why what he just said was so incredibly funny. But
well, he really is a bad guy. I mean, he really is
terrible,
a bad guy.
terrible man.
But okay, so here's the thing: would you be more scared of Antiochus, or would you be more scared of Antiochus?
I don't know. For the effect of the radio, let's try this. Let's see.
Antiochus.
There you go. But basically, when Alexander dies and he doesn't have anybody to take over the kingdom, his kingdom breaks up into two. In our area, we had the Ptolemies in the south, but Antiochus is part of the Seleucid kind of empire in the north. And to make the long story short, he was very Greek. Hellenistic is what we call it. And he was into the Greek things, and he was a bad guy, and he decided that he didn't like the Jews, and he was going to kind of persecute the Jews. So he does it in a couple of ways. He desecrates the temple. He brings some pigs into the temple and turns the temple into a pagan kind of sanctuary. And he tries to disassociate the people from their God. And last chapter of this, we talked about the connection between God, people, and land. He tries to break that connection. And one of the ways that he does to break the connection is you're not allowed to practice your religion. We want you to practice the religion of the land. And he outlaws the outer, so to say, symbol of our brit, our agreement with God, and that is circumcision. He does it for Hellenistic reasons, but we don't call it circumcision. We actually call it the covenant. Okay, an 8-day-old Jewish child makes a covenant with God. He gets plugged into that covenant.
Yep.
And what Antiochus tried to do is break the covenant. And again, we've been there, done that, and again, that was the situation. So we had no choice. And across the street from my mom's house is a hill in a city called Modi'in, where a guy named Matthew the Hammer, or if you want to do it in Hebrew, okay, Matityahu HaMaccabi means the hammer, said, we're not going to bow down to this anymore, and started off a rebellion against two things. The first part of the rebellion was against the Greeks and the Greek Empire. Now, remember, this is the Greek Empire that had just now conquered the world, and these are the same guys that you saw in the movie 300. Remember them? Okay, same idea. But also the rebellion is against the Hellenistic Jews. The Hellenized Jews are what your friend Kaddis called the international Jews, who were buying into, okay, we can be part of the nations. We can kind of forget our special position with God and forget our connection to the land, and we can buy into it. By the way, been there, done that again and again and again. So in this case, this is the Maccabean revolt against the Greeks. Fought a couple of battles in the area, basically where I live. By the way, very interesting connection. One of the battles that was fought by the Jews against the Greeks, where we won, was at a place called Emmaus.
Yeah.
Okay, and if anybody knows the New Testament, the road to Emmaus.
That's right.
And it's interesting that that's where we had to fight a battle to kind of throw the shackles of the Greek Empire off. We went back up to the temple, re-inaugurated the temple. We rededicated the temple, meaning we did a dedication of the temple with a lamp, with a little jar of oil that we kind of poured into the menorah. So the temple is rededicated. So we call it the Feast of Dedication. The word for dedication in Hebrew is Hanukkah. Mm-hmm. And that's the Feast of Hanukkah, which is mentioned in the New Testament in John 10.
Yeah. Jesus celebrated Hanukkah.
Exactly.
Matter of fact, the scriptures make that very, very clear. One of the things that's interesting with that is the connection that you made with the Emmaus Road, and why that's has a significant bearing at the end of the life of Jesus. But isn't it amazing to think about the idea that there is so much rich history in that feast of dedication, right? Because when that temple was dedicated, it was very special because there were some miraculous things associated with it. Maybe you can talk about this, especially when we talk about the candlestick and what happened with the menorah, that situation. Can we talk about that for just a second?
Well, you all know what a menorah looks like. It's like the 7-branch candelabra, I think is what you say in English, that is mentioned in the Bible way back in the beginning, connected to the tabernacle. We know that the children of Israel were commanded to create that menorah to be a symbol of the 7 days of creation. And basically that was lit in the temple, in the tabernacle, and later on in the temple, over the years. That is a symbol of God's connection to reality and to the world. But when we rededicated the temple, and they found enough oil in the temple, and it's a special kind of very, very uniquely manufactured oil, enough oil to last for 1 day. So they poured 1 day's worth of oil into the menorah, and they kind of bustled and hustled to create more oil, to manufacture more oil. But the new oil takes 8 days to manufacture. But they poured 1 day's worth of oil into the menorah, and lo and behold, that menorah stayed lit for the 8 days it took until we manufactured the more. Meaning,
amazing.
We reconnected, and again, it's a festival of life. It's a festival of creation. And one of the things that people need to remember, it's a festival of dedication. I mean, this is dedicated, and I can't help but this is me in tour guide mode, but make that connection to the fact that Jesus went up to celebrate in the temple on the Feast of Dedication on the side of Mount Moriah, which is God's classroom, God's, where God teaches us. More is teacher, Yah is God. So God's teachings, okay, on the side of that hill is where God dedicated Jesus to be our Savior. And again, it's fascinating that the festivals, the feast, the dedication, the physical connection to Mount Moriah. And again, I miss Israel. Maybe that's why I went into tour guide mode just now.
So, real question: why is it oftentimes referred to as the Festival of Lights? We hear that reference a lot.
Again,
why
because
is
of
that?
the 8 lights. We light, in order to remember the 8 days, okay, we light 8 candles. Now, we light 1 candle on the first day, 2 candles on the second day, and so forth and so on, until you see 8 candles lit on the last day of Hanukkah. So when you see something that looks like a menorah that has 9 candles, 4 on both sides and 1 in the middle, or 8 on one side, that is a Chanukiah. It's not a menorah, it's a Chanukiah. That is for the 8 days of Hanukkah. But maybe to tie into what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
I'm living in the States right now, going from place to place, talking about Israel while this is going on. And lo and behold, we're coming into Christmas, and Christmas comes into Hanukkah. And I'm saying, wait a minute, I've got Christmas lights on the house. Again, I did my Christmas lights for the first time this year.
That's great.
Which is weird. The neighbor came over yesterday and said, I've been living here for 26 years. There's never been Christmas lights on the house until a Jew came to live next to me.
That's awesome. You got to love that. You have to absolutely love that.
But then I said, wait a minute. Why don't I put a Chanukiah up on the window?
I love that.
Well, here's the problem. I didn't. And I'm not sure I would put an Israeli flag up, because in the environment that we're talking about in the United States of America,
Oh, yeah.
I'm kind of worried. I'm kind of thinking about, do I want outward signs of my Jewishness on the house? Now, I wouldn't have a problem, but, there are other people living in that house, and I'm not there all the time, and some of them are a little bit younger, and I got to be sensitive to that. And again, maybe that's what we need to talk about now is why me and other Jews in the LA basin or in California or in the United States of America are afraid to put a Chanukiah up on their house today.
Yeah, it's amazing. I praise God I live in a neighborhood where I see a lot of them in a lot of houses.
Okay.
But that's because I live in a neighborhood where a lot of Jews live, and I live in a neighborhood where there's a lot of very conservative people that are very supportive of Jews. And I started seeing Israeli flags go up the very day that October 7th happened, but that's very rare. You don't see that happening a lot, number one. And I warned my wife the very day that I decided to wear these dog tags, every day. Mm-hmm. And for those of you that are listening on the radio, you can hear it. You can't see it. For those watching, you can see this. And, in Hebrew at the very top, it says our hearts are in Gaza. And at the very bottom, it says, bring them home now. And I will not be taking these off until the last hostages get home. I think it's important that we stand. The fear that you have, or the concern, is very real. It's legitimate, right? You're a married man. You have to think about the welfare of not only your wife, but your children. There's a lot to be said there. But I want to say this. It's like I've never seen it before. I actually think that from all the reading that I've been reading and all the studying I've done over the years of the anti-Semitic sentiments that we were seeing leading into World War II, what we're seeing today is worse than that. And part of it could be because we have so much more media available to us. But when I get comments on my own shows that I do, I did an interview, an amazing interview, by the way, with Bibi Netanyahu's brother. Mm-hmm. And it was great. For those of you that are listening on the radio, you can watch it on my YouTube channel. And I asked him some pretty unique questions about things that led to the condition that we're in today, and so on and so forth. It would blow your mind how many anti-Semitic comments came across in that interview. One of the comments that came, and this one was just extremely disturbing, was, I'm disappointed in Adolf Hitler because he didn't finish the job.
Oh, yeah. We've heard that.
And we see things like that being discussed And it's terrible because it's definitely coming from a very satanic root. Now, speaking of which, for those of you that are watching us online, you're going to be able to see this video because we're going to play it for you. For those of you that are not, that are listening on the radio, what I'm about to play is a video that is absolutely shocking. This is a Poland lawmaker who refers to Hanukkah as a satanic holiday, and the lighting of the candles are satanic, even though Jesus himself celebrated Hanukkah,
Okay.
even though what it represents is righteousness. And he walks into the parliamentary building, the Polish parliamentary building, where they are celebrating Hanukkah. And I believe they're lighting all the candles, or they've lit the 8th candle. So I think this happens on the 15th of December, right? Because that was the last day of Hanukkah. I think the first day being the 7th, I think is when it started this year.
You're better at the numbers than I am.
Yeah, I think 7th, and it ended on the 15th. And what you are about to watch is amazing. Let me show this to you, David, and I want to get your reaction to this because this is, heads up, this is just terrible. But let's play the video here. What goes through your head when you see something like that?
It's Poland.
Poland.
Haven't we gone through enough in Poland? I mean, do you know where a lot of the concentration camps were?
I know.
Do you know how many of my people died in Poland?
Yep.
Do you know how many of my people who survived the Nazi mass murder and came back to the houses in Poland were kicked out of their own homes by the Polish people? I mean, does it never end? But again, and I'm going to say something that I think that a lot of Americans, a lot of Westerners don't really understand. I'm not surprised. Okay, let's go back again. And we talked about Malachi, and we talked about, the Jews have a history of not listening to God and being punished for it. And the Jews have a history of being cursed, okay, by other people. And we talked about that on the last episode. But basically, I'm not surprised that we're being hated and we're being persecuted. And somebody is kind of, snuffing out our symbols of light and our symbols of hope. I'm not surprised that somebody is trying to do that. Like I say, I have anti-Semitism. If you cut my vein open, there's anti-Semitism in my blood. It's part of my genes. Okay, we've grown up on this anti-Semitism year after year, generation after generation. What happened on October 7th has been a a reminder. Think about something that you were a bike rider when you were a kid, but you haven't ridden a bike for 30 years, and all of a sudden you get on the bike after 30 years, and all of a sudden you know that feeling.
Yep.
As a people, we've been persecuted like that for generations. Let's go back to the fact that we are not surprised at anti-Semitism, and what Israel realized is that one, we're still hated. Two, we thought never again, but here it happened again, and it kind of smacked us. And three, we thought that the world, especially the liberal Western world, understood the Holocaust, understood who we are, appreciated all the positive things that we bring. I mean, I'm seeing a lot of videos right now about if you want to boycott Israel, you have to boycott, flash drives, you have to boycott drip irrigation, you have to boycott a lot of things. We did bring a lot, okay, and we thought that the world had appreciated what we're bringing, and we're looking at the hundreds of thousands of people that are walking through the streets of the United States right now calling for intifada and calling for jihad and calling from the river to the sea, which basically is an anti-Semitic call for ethnic cleansing of Jews from the river to the sea.
Yeah.
And you know, and then we're saying, wait a minute. We've been there. We've done that. Okay. We thought that our neighbors were part of this, and we're getting smacked in the face with this anti-Semitism that's kind of seeping out from all the holes right now.
Yeah, and I have to show you this chart and take a look at this because I've shared this on multiple occasions with many, many different people. And this speaks volumes of how much suffering the Jews have undergone. What we're looking at is just a section of Arab nations. It's just a small chart of Arab nations. Algeria, Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Libya, Morocco, Syria, Tunisia, Yemen, and Aden. Okay? Now, that's just this sample. And in 1948, there were 851,000 Jews that lived in all of those Arab nations. Just those Arab nations. Okay? As of 2018, we're not talking about today because today the numbers are far less. But as of 2018, that number is 3,330. So from almost 1 million to 3,330.
So the Jews have been ethnically cleansed from the Middle East, from all the other nations where we had long generations, long societies, long cultures. I mean, you know, generation after generation. Don't get me wrong. I mean, a lot of people still speak Moroccan in Israel. A lot of people still speak Arabic in Israel, and people don't really realize that. But they were ethnically cleansed from their homelands, or from the nations that they lived in, and they were sent back to their. And here's the thing, and I find it fascinating when people say, "We're colonists. Return to where you came from."
Oh yeah,
well, we're returning to where we came from.
that's right.
And that's the absurd of the call, the anti-colonial call. How can we be colonists in our own land? How can we be? I mean, it's like you saying you're how do you say a squatter in your own house.
Yeah. I mean, listen, the Jews returning to Israel is perhaps the most significant and powerful story of decolonization that we have heard in world history. We don't know of a more powerful story of decolonization. I mean, if you think about it, the League of Nations, when we talk about recent history, right, basically tasks Britain in order, in essence, to colonize this area. And when the Jews came back in 1948, you want to talk about the ultimate decolonization. That was the United Kingdom, in essence, based on the, I don't know what you want to call it, the advances of the League of Nations, giving Israel back to its people. And if you want to talk about the ultimate story of decolonization, there it is right there.
Okay, let me go the other side. You want to talk about the ultimate story of colonization. Think about the Muslim expansion after Muhammad created Islam. 100%. And Islam spread out from Saudi Arabia, basically, and conquered everything all the way up to Spain. What did they do? They did it, what? With flowers? No. And I think it was Bill Maher said it's not by chance that the symbol on the flag of Saudi Arabia is a sword, because they colonized everything all the way up to Spain by force of sword. They didn't ask nicely, and it was a colonization kind of an empire. And most empires, by the way, were colonized. I mean, the Greeks did the same. I mean, what do you think the Greeks were doing in Palestine, Judea, the Holy Land? Call it what you want. Yeah. The Greeks came down and colonized, basically. So why are the Arabs not colonizers in Judea? And here's one of the weirdest things. And I hear them walking through the streets in the States saying Jesus was a Palestinian.
Yeah. I mean, what do you say? I mean,
yes, but here's the thing, James, and maybe this is something that people need to really understand about who we are. Okay, we're not surprised that people lie about us. We're not surprised that people tells terrible stories. What surprises us, and maybe this is to our listeners and to our viewers, is that normal, God-fearing, rational people believe the lies in many, many cases. And that is something that I think, and again, me being in the States for the last couple of months is more, I think, scary than anything.
Yeah.
Is the fact that, okay, I agree that there are people that are going to hate me. I mean, I'm you get to a point where you realize that not everybody's going to love you. I mean, after you finish kindergarten, you realize that there's going to be people that are not going to like you and people are not going to like you. So I can understand. But the people who like me, the people who say they love God's chosen people, the people who say we support Israel, who buy into the lies, that is scary for us, because that's the beginning of a process, like we said, we have seen in the past. And it's not by chance that we have this feeling that, oh, we've been here before.
Yeah. Man, I got to tell you, we are out of time. But I think that it's a very, very good thing for us to reflect upon one very important fact, and that is God made the declaration. Whether or not we like it, God is the one that declared you, your people, the Jews, to be his example to the nations. And I think that for us, we have to recognize that for what it is. We have to recognize the gift that we have in the Jewish population that live on this earth. And we have an obligation to pray for Israel. We have an obligation to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. We have an obligation to pray for the Jewish people and God's protection upon them, because what we're seeing right now is unprecedented. And things are going to get very, very dark very quickly. They're already getting dark very quickly. And we just have a lot to pray for. David, any final words as we wrap it up?
Like you've been doing, and I'll do this too. I'm going to quote my dad, okay? Because, my dad was a pastor in Israel for many, many years. And one of the things he used to say is that if you want to see the fingers of God meddling in the affairs of men in the world today, look at Israel.
Yep.
And I'm going to take that, though, a little bit further. If you want to see the fingers of Satan meddling in the world today, okay, look at what's happening to Israel.
Amen.
And I think that's something to take with us.
That's a heavy word. Folks, I got to tell you, a lot of good stuff to take home on this one. We do sincerely hope that you've enjoyed listening to this as much as we've enjoyed making it. This is the last episode of Countdown to Eternity for the year. And I think that there's a lot to be said about the blessing that we have in being able to produce this for you, and the love that God has given us for you as a people. We're just so grateful. We're grateful to be able to serve you. We're grateful to be able to be a part of your lives as you take us on your drives, in your living rooms, on your TVs. We just sincerely hope that you've enjoyed this time, this whole year. I pray that you have enjoyed all of this as much as we've enjoyed making it. We love you guys. Keep your eyes on Jesus. And boy, oh boy, oh boy, I can't tell you this. He is coming soon, and sooner than we all think. So God bless you guys. We love you. And next year, we'll be counting down to eternity, and we've got some great shows planned for you. We love you guys. God bless you.
Thanks for joining us on this week's Countdown to Eternity. We want to encourage you to visit JamesKaddis.com to find additional content and resources to equip you for the spiritual battle that we fight every day. You can also subscribe to James Kaddis over on YouTube and Rumble. If you'd like to support Pastor James and his family directly, visit JamesKaddis.locals.com and subscribe there. You'll gain access to exclusive content, daily devotionals, and more. Countdown to Eternity is listener supported. Until next week, may the Lord bless you and keep you.